The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges with a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, not afraid to give you the honest truth. I am covering today a topic I've been wanting to cover for a very long time, and that's about dads. Dads and their roles with pregnancy, fertility, supporting their wives. We kind of take a back seat too often, and I was thinking about who do I get on the show to talk about this? And I've got the perfect guest for this particular segment, and that is Dr. Patrick Flynn. Thank you for joining me.
Dr. Paul, it's an honor.
You are one of my most admired functional medicine clinicians, chiropractor, international speaker, best-selling author, the founder of Wellness Way, and so much more, and a friend. So I'm honored to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Excited for our topic today.
I want to start with you and fertility, because I remember when I heard your story, it was personal for you. And it feels like today more than ever, young couples are really struggling with fertility. So maybe a little bit of your story, if you wish, and then the fertility dynamic issue at hand, and then we'll jump more into the father's role and pivot from there.
Yeah, and a quick synopsis of the history is I was a sick kid, and I was affected by having a neurological and immunological problem. So I went to school with the love of nutrition and immunology, and then I just looked at all the medical field, and it just didn't make any sense to me, considering I was a sick kid that wasn't getting well in the realm. So I went more of a natural route, adapted into a chiropractic realm, and with my other pre and postgraduate degrees. And then so I had just this obsession about just overall, health being a functional viewpoint of it that way. And then as I was getting out of school and starting practice, I met this beautiful woman, and no joke, within 2 weeks, we knew we were gonna get married. We wanted to be together. And what had happened is, but she gave me an opportunity to break up with her because she was diagnosed and with infertility. She had endometriosis so bad, they wanted to do major surgery. She had ulcerative colitis, she had cystic acne, and she had cluster headaches. And so talk about being personal, obviously I had to make a choice, do I stay with this woman, or because she knew I wanted a bunch of kids. And of course, the story goes, as you've heard, is that was now my wife of now 24 years, and we have 4 beautiful daughters. And she was even given recommendations by all doctors that, listen, to adopt, and we're gonna have to rip a uterus. If we don't do it now, you're gonna have cancers later. So this whole topic of infertility and let's even say the dad's role, even though my background allows me to have some clinical insight to it, the dad has a very important role with this whole story. And I think we're not taking that serious enough, which I believe are some of the major contributing factors of why there is a little bit more infertility than in the past, 50 years.
What can dads do? I have kids. I have 5 sons, and 2 of them, maybe there'll be a third, are in that process. One has a young child. They want to have another. The other one, they're both in that we want to have kids. What are the things they can do?
A lot of people don't realize that when infertility exists, there's usually some female health issue or some male health issue. It's usually 50-50, okay? But here's the point. The environment, and let's say, for example, that a dad contributes to, or let's say a spouse contributes to. If I look at the major factors that will lead to a woman having, issues that could lead to infertility, there's a major endocrine issue. There's a major inflammatory issue, okay? And what I realized from now 26 years of doing this, and now we're doing this, but we have hundreds of doctors that work for us, and the things that we do, is this has been replicated over and over again. What by far, I think the most devastating things to a woman's health is an element of stress, okay? Mental and physical. Men and women are extremely different. Their bodies, how men and women handle stress in the bodies is extremely different. If we look at just the male body itself, now obviously I want to take care as much as we can, but the mental and physical demands of a man their body can handle the consequences better than a female. Okay. Now, once again, in our political realm today, people are like going, you're saying that they're weak. We are not. The things that they can do, we can't do. But the idea is this, the aspect of stress and how it affects the female body puts it into an environment of fight or flight, which good luck getting pregnant. You say,
Right.
good luck having normal estrogen and progesterone levels, which Doc, you know extremely well yourself, and it's not hard to run a lab on a woman and see these things. But instead of trying to use hormone therapy and do all the things that are going on, the element of understanding the environment that a woman lives within, and that could be from her household to her work, to what she does, puts in her body, puts on her body, these chemical stressors and stuff. I believe it's the job of a man's role, because I believe that I can sum up men in three different words: provider, protector, and procreator. Okay, and they're supposed to even protect their spouse from the stress that could throw them off hormonally. So it's like this. We know this. We know that if a woman is and let's say she's ready to deliver the next day, if she's in a very stress-free environment compared to a high-stress environment, the birthing process is going to go better anyways. And so it is this. So a woman's body. So for example, ladies, I want you to picture this. I want you to picture that you have massive mental stress today. You can even tell there's an endocrine response going on, and if that stress is always there, and women by nature, ladies, you're so wonderful. You take on so many things that way. But I believe the man's role is to protect the woman, even from herself sometimes, put herself through all this stress.
Your clinics, The Wellness Way, you have done a masterful job. I've gone to a couple of your talks out in the field, if you will, in your various clinics. And this area of fertility and the male role of supporting their wives, you cover so eloquently and so beautifully. Men, I've got to speak to stress. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, however you want to combine it all. When you are in fight or flight, you are in a state where you're not going to be able to have functional anything, especially not making a new child and bringing a child into the world. So in my case, I found stress was probably the trigger for cancer. I'm dealing with a little bit of that. And because again, that's not a healing point. You need to be in parasympathetic rest, digest, and heal, and procreate. That's all that parasympathetic. So what can men do? You're such a great dad. What did you do for your wife as you were preparing to have children? What can men do? Some practical things.
Well, this is the simplest thing. And I actually had a video that has now well over 1 billion views, not a million, 1 billion views, because I've proven, and I've even had scientists reach out from all over the world to prove this. Okay. Women need more sleep than men, period. They do. Okay. If you look at the endocrine reserves, if you look at the recovery from the day before, if you look at, for example, what happens neurologically, a woman needs 8 to 10. I love when my wife gets 9 to 10 hours of sleep per night. I love when my daughters get 9 to 10 hours sleep per night. Men, we can get away with a little bit less. Now we need sleep. Do you understand? It's just the endocrine consequences and the neurological consequences of women not getting at least, I'm always pushing towards 9 or 10 for women, always. Okay. And so this is a normal thing. And my wife and I'm 50 and my wife's 49. We're done having children, but still as a protector of that household and a protector of 4 daughters. Okay. I'm always encouraging and sometimes being very stern. Hey guys, it's time for bed. Wow. You're not their dad. See people say, well, you're trying to control your wife. Something like this, ladies, let's just talk about this very eloquently. Okay. You guys, it takes you much more time to slow your brain down than the man. You will give yourself good reasons to stay up till 10, 11, because all this stuff has to get done. Okay. And guys, we're so good at shutting our brains off. We can forget most things exist and shut down and go to sleep. Okay. And I know that because I've actually dealt with women on my whole world for 26 years has been infertility. Not because that was the thing I went to school for. It's just that the practices and procedures and protocols and stuff I put in place have been very successful. Okay. And so therefore, number one, get your butt to bed. Okay. We need to do this as a protector. I'm trying to protect your body. You see, now we understand this too. If you look at just even hormones itself, you have to have a protein and a healthy fat. You know what I'm saying? Because once again, all of your anabolic hormones, once they are fat derived and protein derived that way. So that's why I tell people, I know it sounds funny, just even what they consume. My wife, who's 107 pounds, she'll consume 140, 150 grams of protein per day. You see, so so what we're doing is, as a leader of the household, as a person that cares about every patient, female that walks through the door, I'm trying to protect them and guide them. That's going to give them the best chance of actually things being normal. Now, so you look at sleep, you do this, movement. Now, here's another thing. Here's another thing that I didn't realize when I started teaching 26 years ago was going to be so revolutionary. Ladies, if you look at your cycle, if your estradiol and all the other estrogens, your progesterone, and it changes through the month. It's not the same levels. Even Dr. Paul and I at our ages, our testosterone maintains a very normal basis through the day and through the weeks and through the month, and just goes a little bit higher in the morning, okay? And that gets us going. But ladies, your production of your estrogens and your progesterone fluctuates through the month, okay? Now, why that is so important is because it's very important for women to move every day. I didn't say the aspect of exercise, because sometimes when they exercise, they push themselves at the wrong period of time, which can now lead to a loss of hormone, okay? So we're protecting women from that mental stress, that physical stress. And I know it's really interesting is, ladies, you've been in this situation to where you were so mentally stressed out that you delayed or skipped your cycle. See, so I believe our role, now I took this on, number one, as because I wanted my beautiful bride to actually have a child. And it was great. And we got to reverse the whole endometrial process, ulcerative colitis process. Her skin's absolutely beautiful. She doesn't get headaches anymore. And then, of course, now she pops out kids like Skittles. You know what I'm saying? So
I used to think you're done, right?
Done. But it's like she was and her cycle was just easy to map out. See, it's funny. The body gives such great clues because, ladies, as I'm speaking to you and you notice that your cycle changed based on the stressors in your life, I believe it's always a man that will have to say, hey, honey, that's going on. Because, ladies, you're so wonderful. You always want to get everything done. There's always so much to do. But I think the man's role
to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
So men, jump in and do what you can, right?
Yes. And actually jump in, do what you can, but also recognize, bring it to their attention. You say, because women will start to deal with stress better just by women listening to this. And maybe they're even menopausal. Maybe they're not in their fertility years that they won't have any kids anymore, but they still recognize now that the endocrine disruption from those stressors are so negative to all aspects of your life, including fertility.
You mentioned a pretty hefty dose of protein. You're trying to get pregnant. What about fat intake? Those hormones require cholesterol.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And by nature, when you eat very decent proteins, you're going to get that. Now that's why, for example, if you look at just even thyroid issues, okay, people that are a little bit more, no one's going to all my vegan friends, I absolutely love you. Okay. There are really good protein sources that you can get with plant-based. It's just more difficult because there's a lot of fiber attached. You have to consume much more calories. It's hard to sometimes eat that much roughage and everything. So when you do eat an animal-based product, what you now do is you actually have a good ratio of your protein to fat concentration compared to your plant sources. You might have to add in other, even supplement or add either something else to actually bring those fatty acid levels up.
Yep. Might be avocado. It might be extra virgin olive oil, organic, everything, obviously.
Yep. But even then, it's going to sound funny me saying this. Even those, you still might be a little bit deficient. See, if you look at sterile-based hormones, that's why it's so evident in just animal products itself, because they're producing them themselves and stuff. Plant sterols are a little bit different, and once again, and so therefore, what we want to do is we want to actually encourage them that way. So I've had a lot of people. And Daron, once again, I always try to tell people there's really good plant-based proteins. There's really good animal-based proteins. I favor more towards animal-based just because of the other dense nutrients that exist in it. I'm a very big organ meat person, I think that liverwurst that I have at least an ounce a day of is, heart, liver, and kidney. And there's such a massive amount of things that support not only just overall health, but fertility both in men and women, especially, when you look at testicular health.
Yeah. So we've covered nutrition, we've covered stress. What about toxins? What are the toxins you worry about the most? I think that's going to certainly interfere with a woman's ability to have a child or carry a child.
Yeah, and this may surprise you, but just through the years, okay, it just because it's become so common, okay, the major endocrine disruptors that I think have thrown women into a tailspin in infertility is number one, birth control. It's actually known, it's classified, you know that, doc, as an endocrine disruptor. And there's in the endocrine disruption happens neurologically. And so therefore, then a lot of women have a hard time rebooting their LH and FSH, and so therefore they end up taking some form of hormone during to try to get some levels normal that way. Now, I think don't quote me exactly on this, but I'm just reading the last statistic. I think that they said like 76% of all women, during a certain time of year or during a certain time of their lifetime have taken some form of birth control. Okay, that's significant.
Sure.
That is significant. And if you ever do look at this, one of the negative side effects of birth control is actually infertility. It actually lists it, okay? Because it's an endocrine disruptor. Now, if you look at things just as simple as, plastics, glyphosate, people don't realize this, MSG, now you say, doc, how is that possible? Well, glutamate, once again, is an amino acid that can affect us neurologically. And that's why if you ever look at mental stress, there's a neurological response. So some of these endocrine disruptors are neurological disruptors that now lead to an LH or FSH from the pituitary problem. And therefore, there's the timing. Because ladies, like I said, it's not just like Dr. Paul and I, to where our body produces some LH today, and we get a surge of it. We get some testicular stimulation and some release, and it circulates, and we get some conversions. And women, you are different weekly. You are really different weekly. So any neurological disruptor, as those endocrine disruptors, is dramatically devastating. So that's why clean eating. That's why if you look at some of the things that we do put on our skin, that's why. So what we're doing is we're just pulling away those endocrine disruptors. Ladies, your makeup, your perfumes, your the things that you eat, what you cook them in. It's not a secret. Like if you microwave some organic food in plastic, it's a bad day. You might as well just had the highly processed food, because you have all those things, the BPAs and everything that exists in there. These things are so common within our practices of life. A woman will come into me and say, doc, I have no idea why I'm sick. I said, well, what'd you brush your teeth with? Well, Colgate. Okay, what was your mouthwash? Listerine. Okay, I have Maybelline makeup on. I'm like, we just got to the morning, you've already endocrine disrupted yourself 3 times. See, everybody's looking for some big catastrophic event that makes them infertile. And we don't realize it's all the micro stresses, it's all the micro traumas that are disrupting you both neurologically and endocrine wise that lead to now this whole cascade of hormones. And once again, and men have them too. Men, once again, did they start to actually consume too much sugar? Adipose tissue increases. I'm frustrated with this today, Dr. Paul, because I see this, and I think this is setting up males to not understand this properly. I hear this, testosterone for the overall men is significantly less than it was 50 years ago. And they act like that we produce less testosterone ever in history. And that is not true. Do you want me to go pull my blood work? It's 851. Okay. Now what happens is this.
But you're not a normal average male.
No. But yes, I am. I have the same makeup and biology as most people and things like that. Because here's what happens. If you think about this, the vast majority of men are an all-time aspect of weight. They're going to aromatase their testosterone into estrogens. That's why 1 out of every 100 breast cancer cases today are now men, which estrogen levels now contribute to one of the biggest contributors to both female and male as far as breast cancer. So it's not like men are lacking production. They're just converting it to estrogens. It's
the obesity and overweight epidemic that's resulting in that.
I believe that metabolic syndrome, aka that obesity epidemic, has probably been the biggest contributor to why. And men, if you're watching this, or ladies, if you're watching this, don't just get your men's testosterone or free testosterone. Get their estrone, and all their estrogens measured, because that's why we even see so much of the factors of been actually taking on more female characteristics, both physically and mentally. And mentally.
Interesting. Very interesting. Did you have your kids at home or in the hospital?
My kids were all born at home. The only doctors that my kids ever saw is me. And and I will tell you this: I heard you speak for the first time, and I will, and I'm, you know, obviously I was a little bit more spunky when I was younger, because being on my side of the aisle, I was always everything that medicine always taught most people. I was against, because I was like going, they're lying to you, and I was just the quack, okay, and. Yep. And the doctors that I just despised the most, now not from a true hatred, just like I'd cringe their words because I'd see the devastation happen to it, was a pediatrician, okay? Yep. And I was, for all my kids, I was so proud that my kids will have never see a pediatrician. And it's really funny, and if you remember this, I remember getting to know you, and I said, Doc, you're the only pediatrician that I would ever, ever, I'm gonna say this again, it's not a joke, ever, or my future grandkids, the only pediatrician I would ever call would probably be you. Would be you. You know, Sam? Because maybe you have some good colleagues that have now learned from you, and you'll introduce me to them that way and stuff of that. But you're the only real great pediatrician that I do know and stuff of that. Which, for example, please buy this book. It's absolutely incredible and stuff. I bought a bunch of them for my staff and stuff of that. And so it's pretty amazing. Great book and stuff of that. Absolutely incredible book.
Oh, thank you for that plug. Well, you are my favorite chiropractor because you're so much more than that. You are a real, true functional medicine, holistic healer. And you approach things both scientifically, but from a natural common sense wisdom that you just have. So thank you for that, and that you're so passionate and you share it with the world. A home birth, by the way, has a ton of advantages. I wonder if you might just share a couple of those for people. I think people just sort of rule it out as, oh, I couldn't do that. And I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do.
Well, you know, and for all you beautiful women that have babies, you can confirm this to everybody, okay? I actually treated my wife's birth like a sporting event, okay? There had to be preparation.
There had to be. You did.
Well, because you know why? Because it's an event. It's, ask any woman to see my wife's back there right now. It's an event. It's actually, it takes exhilaration. It takes effort. It takes a lot of things. It'd be like going to work out in the gym and haven't worked out for 2 years. So there's got to be some preparation that way. So therefore, we weren't really scared about home birth because, and plus I also know the morbidity and mortality statistics in the hospital when it comes to delivery anyways. So statistically, I was safer at home. And my wife didn't see anybody through her whole pregnancy besides, you know, a doula and midwife that way. And it was great. And I took care of her and did all her labs and did everything that way. And it was fantastic. And then one day I came home from the office and she started having some contractions about 8 o'clock, and Faith was born at 1:22 in the morning. And that was yesterday. So I was a dad as of 22 years ago yesterday and stuff.
How about that?
Oh, I apologize. Wednesday. I apologize. It was the 16th, not today's 18th. And then get this. So then obviously, then as soon as my wife got done, started to, you know, and she breastfed. My wife actually breastfed for 12 straight years, and she almost made it. She made it a week before her 40th birthday, before she got her cycle back. So wow. she was envious of not having her cycle through her whole 30s. And but here's what happened. And then of course, we started, okay, listen, because my wife was so sick, what happened was this, and then we started to get her to recover wonderfully. We spaced out the babies a little bit that way to give her body a little time to recover, did some labs, made sure she's doing great, and then tried to get pregnant again. Boom, there it was. And then with Trinity, it was a little bit different because all of a sudden we were sleeping. It was 1 a.m. in the morning. My wife gave me a little slap and said, honey, I think the baby's coming. And I said, no, wait, I didn't go back to sleep. And about 3 minutes later, she hit me again. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go run the tub and stuff of that. And the baby was born at 3 o'clock, 3:30. Chrissy and Felicity were back in the bed sleeping, breastfeeding. I was cleaning up the tub. The midwife barely got there and everything. Third baby, no joke, same thing. Beautiful water birth. I think labor is about maybe 8 hours from start to finish. Felicity, my wife she woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't even make it to the bathroom, to the tub, because everything came so fast. She came shooting out like a rocket. Okay. Now, but here's what happened. But see, how about this? There was proper nutrition, so she wasn't inflamed. She actually made sure that we had all the things she was taking: vitamin D, vitamin K2, vitamin K itself this way, all the nutrient things that she needed. She had to worry about clotting or tooth in the blood and bleeding. You know, the birthing, none of my kids were born with my wife laying on her back. Actually, more of it was upright on all fours. You understand? So assisting gravity through the process that way, leaving it in. What's good is, you know, I'm a chiropractor. You know, laying on your back, bringing your sacrum, putting up isn't going to be great for that baby to come out.
Yeah, you got no help from gravity that way.
Yeah. So we just worked with the way we believe it's supposed to be, and so therefore there is 4 experiences that way instead of that. So it's like, and people say you're lucky. No, that was planned,
intentional.
And yes, I so understand why there's emergencies. You know, I look at how, and I mean this very sincerely, because most people are not guided properly. And Doc, as you know, we see you had practiced and observed that what happens if people don't get good guidance from how to take care of the kids when they're young, then they are throwing all this junk and food and horrible stuff and vaccine in that way. And then we wonder why people are sick older. Well, no one's teaching women how to actually have a very healthy pregnancy and a very good delivery. So then therefore they're not going to rupture or have highly inflammatory things and bleed out and need emergencies. I get why, when the biggest preparation that they're doing for women for delivery is Lamaze class. Oh my goodness. I would be scared too.
Yeah. Speaking of this, I know you speak internationally all over the place. You've written extensively. Do you have a resource for parents that's written or recorded somewhere? The parents to be that might want to consider home birth, et cetera.
No, but I think you and I could write something.
Probably should.
Because
I didn't foresee asking that question, but it just thought to me, what you're saying rings true, but most parents today are still going to be a little fearful. They need more hand-holding, I think.
Well, they do.
Little more a step-to-step guide.
Because we've had 40, 50 years of indoctrination of, oh my goodness, home birth bad, hospital only way to go and stuff like that. It's like, and I understand. So it just they keep on repeating the same thing. It's like, and so they've created dependency. But think this way, what a great business model. Scare everybody to go to the hospital that way, and then and the
standard medicine, it's all about fear, and then we've got the solution for you.
Yeah, and Durham, and it's kind of nice. And I, and I remember you came up to me and after you heard me speak, and you're like, teach me how to be a carpenter. And for people that don't know, I always said I created the greatest example that allows me to speak on all venues, medical. I've spoken at pharmaceutical things, medical things, natural things, chiropractic, naturopathic, functional medicine things. I said, listen, medicine's the fire department. God bless. If your house catches on fire, there's an emergency. We have drugs and surgery, axes and hoses to put it out. But I'm a carpenter. Let's take care of the house, because by statistics, 95% of all fires are preventable. 95% of all healthcare conditions are lifestyle related. Okay. And for the 5% or the major things that happen, God bless, we need medicine, and we need natural things and some of that. And if that dance could come together, guess what happens? I believe that the patient massively benefits. Any natural person says they hate medicine. My thing is this. Okay, then have a really bad abscess tooth and get that tooth worked on without Novocaine. Drug me up.
Yeah, major motor vehicle accident or what have you.
Yeah, and so it's like we need both approaches. It's just the appropriation of when is so key, and we need to start teaching people that. So,
absolutely. So, infant mortality, and we're getting close to wrapping it up, but I just was curious your thoughts on this. Infant mortality in the U.S. is one of the highest, if not the highest, of the industrialized nations. What are your thoughts about why, and what can we do so that we're not a part of that statistic? I mean, if you want to have kids, the last thing you want to do is be that statistic where you lose your baby.
I have nothing to back this up, but I think you'll agree with me on this. As I was going through the rate of how obstetricians and everything, gynos take care of women, getting pregnant, doing everything through delivery, I think it's devastating all the way through. And I just do. I think they're highly inflamed, they're sick, they're doing things, and then now you set that child up, and then you look at it this way. Then you got silver nitrate drops, and I'm sorry, no one could tell me any condition is genetic. Do you know why? Because if you are born with trisomy 21, Down syndrome, you can tell right away. Yet those kids can still live an average, halfway decent life. But when you're injecting a Hep B shot, which we know can trigger every negative gene response there is, it's not genetic. You did this to people. And even some of the statistics of what we're giving these kids right away as far as birth, I believe it's like you set the kids up to be unhealthy, and all of a sudden you're going to give them shots on day one and within the thing, and you wonder why infant mortality is actually there. I have no data to prove that. It's just, but you know, something is this. I always love these scientists that are like, well, you still have to look at outcomes. All right. Well, we're one of the sickest countries in the world based on the practice of medicine. So therefore, I'm sorry, a pediatrician, a OB or something can't say, well, you're wrong. Okay, then what are you going to do to change it? Because you guys are the gatekeepers.
Right.
And I will say this, this, Dr. Paul, we talked this many times. Not one person that came here, and I will tell you this, I have records of this. I personally, after 26 years, have over 2,000 women that were told, diagnosed, infertile, can't have babies, go adopt, that actually have babies. Okay.
Wow.
I actually have a bunch of kids named after me. I even have a set of twins that was named Flynn as the first name and stuff like that. As far as things, it's kind of cool. But here's the point. Is like, none of those people came to me first. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Well, so when people want to criticize what I say, I said, listen, if you were so right, I wouldn't even exist. Do you say it?
True.
See, so when you look at setting that woman up to be sick for delivery, and I got criticized. I did one talk that I didn't realize it got a huge response, but in this, I don't want to, it sounds derogatory, but it's not. Sick mommies produce sick babies.
Mm.
And then we go to doctors, and I said, this is why pediatricians were frustrating to me. And they're giving a Hep B shot right away.
Right.
Come on. I mean, the devastating, the aluminum in there is psychotically bad.
Yeah, way too much. So in the new book, Vax Facts, I have a chapter on SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah.
And that chapter makes it quite clear that it is the vaccines we're giving infants that are actually killing them at such a high rate that it absolutely is the driving force for high infant mortality. But also, it's what our OBGYNs are now doing. So there was a time 50, 60 years ago where no OBGYN would ever dream of injecting anything into a pregnant woman unless it was life-saving. You would not vaccinate a pregnant woman. You've got a developing fetus in there with a developing brain, a developing immune system. It's insanity. But today, you can now, not only can you, but you are being pushed heavily to get the Tdap, the flu shot, the COVID shot, and now an RSV. So it's 4 different shots while you're trying to develop a brain and an immune system.
And it wasn't even this long ago when I first started practice. Okay, this is not a joke. Doctors were hesitant to give pregnant women an aspirin.
Right.
And that was only 25 years ago when I was a young chiropractor. It was like, because people come in so much pain, it was like, and they're pregnant and they want to get adjusted and do things. And then all of a sudden it's like, I remember doctors say, oh, you can't take aspirin when you're pregnant that way. And I was actually happy that doctors said that stuff. Now it's like, man, you could do all this stuff. I'm like, wow, what a change just within a couple decades.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, I've got 3 questions for you.
Yes.
The first one is, to that prospective dad, the husband, what is the key message you want to give him?
Take responsibility for your wife. Women are very unreasonable. They will stay up till 11, 12 o'clock because they always have stuff to do, which is not reasonable. You saying? So you have to do it that way. And that's not a tear. All my women here are going, yep, I've done that before. So take responsibility for your family. Remember, you're a provider, protector, and procreator. Good luck procreating if you're not providing and protecting.
Yeah. Attend to her needs and be present.
That's right.
I got that from you, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
What are your main hopes for the future?
I think they're already happening. Okay. Everything is a pendulum. That's why I've been involved in politics since I was actually legitimately in college. And we see these big shifts. And you've seen this, Doc, because you've been in practice much longer than I have too, is if you saw this thing, the amount of vaccines that were given, look at the shift. And now it's going to start to shift back. Okay. What I want people to do is just be, open to information that could be different than what your wonderful grandma, your wonderful grandpa, mom, dad, your college professor had taught you, because here's what happens. The information that you pass down could be a difference between life and death. My children have never suffered from any healthcare issue. from PMS to acne to anything. And that wasn't by chance. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And therefore, especially if you are very sick, be open to other information, even though it could go against everything your mom taught you.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent advice.
Mhm.
And then finally, this is actually important, folks, because we are talking to a true healer here, or how about this? A true teacher. I think the
I like that
problem
better.
with our society is that we're taught wrong.
Mhm.
And so you can unlearn wrong teaching.
Mhm.
So how can people access your teaching? How can people access your clinics and your care?
Yeah, I have so much free stuff, so much. It's on the wellnessway.com website. We have clinics all over the US, some in Europe, and we're expanding all over. And it just comes down to, because then if you can just share information with people that way, then they can choose to do it or not. See, that's the thing. You were massively censored. I was massively censored during COVID because, like I told you before, my original background, immunology and nutrition, immunology, I actually taught people how the COVID vaccine worked before they even made it out that way, because I look at the mechanism of action, because there's only 3 ways to deliver a vaccine and stuff. And so I got censored for those things. And just understand, like I said, all this stuff is available for free because I truly believe this. As I said before, 95% of all conditions are lifestyle related. That's even just backed by research, okay? So therefore, if you can just give people information, then believe it or not, they don't even need a doctor like me. They need doctors very little. You can take control of your health and stuff like that. And so don't look at me as an authority. Look at me as somebody that's going to come alongside you and just share your information. And then what you do with it, it can either change your life or you can just not even think about it.
You just got a master class there, and I hope you realize that. You may have to rewatch this a couple times and get onto that website that'll be provided to you in the notes here. I'm Dr. Paul. It's always a pleasure to have you on Pediatric Perspectives, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
My name's Gail McCrae.
And you were a nurse during COVID.
I was.
So which area are we going to start at? Why don't you just start telling us what you saw as a nurse? You've heard a lot of these hospital protocol
Yes.
killings,
Well,
as we call them.
I think one of the important things about my situation is that I was working in the Bay Area of California, where we had one of the most compliant populations in the country. So we were compliant with not just the lockdowns and the masking, but also the COVID injections. So in my community, when COVID was first announced and they locked down the hospitals and they stopped the elective surgeries, our hospital completely emptied out. And this was when I really first saw that we were being lied to, because the public was being told in the news that the hospitals were full and overwhelmed, and they weren't. I had colleagues all over the state of California who worked in units all over the hospital in the acute care setting, and not once during that first year of COVID in 2020 and the winter of 2021 were our hospitals overwhelmed. I would say there was during the winter of 2020 and 2021, when this happens every year, people come in with the flu and the hospitals fill. It happens every year. It's been doing that for the whole 12 years I've been working in the acute care setting. So it was not unusual. We were not overwhelmed, and the public was being lied to. So that really opened my eyes to the fact that there were things going on that shouldn't have been going on. And then with the rollout of the isolations, they also started the COVID protocols. And I didn't notice right away the harm of these protocols until I had to tell family members that they couldn't come to the bedside of their dying loved ones. That to me was a crime against humanity and a violation of my oath that I knew right away should not have been happening. We isolate people in prison. We put them in the brig when they've done something wrong to torture them. And that's what I felt like I was being forced to do when I had to tell my patients' family members when they couldn't come into the hospital to be near their dying loved ones. So that was those small kinds of violations that I was recognizing, I think really helped me accept that I needed to more critically analyze what I was being told to do and what was happening around me in the hospital. So after going through those two things at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, it really helped me to stop and think when I was being told to do things. Like the next thing was the administration of remdesivir. This was an experimental use authorization medication. It was the only drug that we were allowed to administer to patients who were hospitalized with COVID, and it was an antiviral. And I'd been taught in my undergrad, my bachelor's degree program for nursing, that you do not administer an antiviral more than 24 to 48 hours post-symptom onset for a viral infection. And so this medication was being given to patients who were hospitalized with COVID, usually not until between 10 and 12 days post-symptom onset. So I would ask my colleagues, why are we giving this medication? The administrators, my hospital, why are we doing this? And their eyes would glaze over. And I would say to them, we have evidence showing that the administration of antivirals more than 2 days post-symptom onset causes more harm than good. The risk-benefit analysis does not correlate. And in addition to that, this was an experimental use product. And I knew that each one of those doses was over $3,000. So that was another huge red flag. In addition to that, the next part of the COVID protocols that was so extremely disturbing to me was the fact that at the onset of hospitalization for COVID, there were a team of respiratory intensivists who went before Congress and showed them how effective high-dose steroids were for the treatment of patients who had COVID. And not only were we ignoring those recommendations for high-dose steroids, they were actually blocking it from our hospitals to use. So we have patients coming in who are being feared to death by the media. They're being isolated from their loved ones. They're having steroid treatments. So I'll say one more thing about these steroids, because this is really important. The COVID, whatever it was, virus, whatever COVID was, it caused more inflammation than we had ever seen in the hospital. So there's a lab value called CRP, and even with influenza and things like this, we had never seen the inflammatory marker of CRP jump so high as we did with COVID. So for the government and the CDC and these three-letter organizations to tell practitioners that they could not administer steroids, which is this is the best treatment for an inflammatory process, it was absolutely criminal. You can't withhold steroids for the most inflammatory disease process that humanity has ever seen. So we have isolation of patients, fear-mongering from the media, withholding steroids, and the administration of remdesivir. Those were the things that I went to work and had to manage, where I every day felt like I was violating my oath as a practitioner. And ultimately, it wasn't until after the rollout of the shots where I just couldn't do my job anymore. So that was the next part of what I witnessed. So I, like I said earlier, worked in the Bay Area of California for an organization called Kaiser Permanente, and they have a full scope of care. Their structure is set up to where you get your primary care, your acute care, the pediatricians, all of the medications, and your vaccines, all in the same organization. So with the COVID vaccine, they were administering it at my hospital. So when in February, so they released these shots to the practitioners in January of 2021, but they didn't release it to the public until close to the end of February. So by the beginning of March, I was starting to notice that my hospital was becoming slammed. And this is unusual because we get, winter rushes. This is how the hospital works. It's dead in the summer and it's full in the winter. Like, this is the cycle. And so I started noticing in March of 21 that it was very peculiar that I was starting to get all these calls to come to work because the hospital was understaffed. And it did not stop. I was in graduate school at the time for my double nurse practitioner degree. So I would do 3 weeks at the hospital and then I'd take some time off and study for my schooling. So by June, when I went into the hospital, I was there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks from March to April, and then another 3 weeks in the middle of June to the beginning of July. And I was working nonstop. I would work doubles basically every single shift. I was getting phone calls 3 times, sometimes 4 times a day to come to work because they were so understaffed at the hospital. And then in June, my manager approached me and he said to me, "Gail, this hospital has had 3 times more admissions than we have ever had since the hospital opened their doors." So that's a 300% increase in hospitalizations directly associated to the onset of these shots. So,
do you mind me asking what you were seeing? Were you seeing heart conditions, blood clots, or were
yes.
you seeing COVID?
So, and this was actually, so during that week, it was the end of June, it was around the 28th of that month when my manager came up to me and said this to me. And during that week, I had mentioned I was working doubles basically every shift I worked. And because of my position, being in grad school, I held the position called per diem. So what that means is that oftentimes when I come to work, I end up filling in. I'll float to wherever they need me in the hospital. So on that shift, when my manager had told me that we had had 3 times more admissions than they'd ever seen, there was that day, the next day I came in and worked a double, and I split that 16 hours between 2 different units. And I got report on every single patient on both of those units. And this is really when it hit me that these were injection injuries, because that's about 30 patients per unit I got report on. Every single one was there for some peculiar clot that I'd never heard of, a stroke, a heart attack. I had seen by that day 4 patients with rapid onset Guillain-Barré. In my entire career, I'd seen 2. 10 years as a nurse in acute care, I'd taken care of 2 patients with Guillain-Barré. Within a few short week period of time, I'd seen 4. And I had the opportunity to ask 2 of those patients directly what they thought was the cause of the onset of their Guillain-Barré, and 2 of them did tell me that they had received those COVID shots within 24 hours of onset of symptoms. And so from there, I approached my managers and I said, I have gotten report on 2 units full of patients that are all having the weirdest set of symptoms, and several of them are confirming that they've just gotten these COVID vaccines. How can I report this? And my direct manager's response was, we cannot report these because we cannot prove that these are what is the cause, that these shots are what is causing these injections. One of my colleagues, who was actually the nurse at the COVID injection clinic, she approached me one day, and she will not come publicly to say this because she's afraid of losing her job. But she had asked her manager the same thing, and they told her that if she reported a single adverse event, she would be fired. So we were constantly under pressure not to report. All of my concerns regarding the COVID protocols for hospitalized patients were were not being addressed. I mentioned multiple times that I felt like we were violating our oaths. I was ignored. So it was shortly after that time in June of 21 when I had legal documents process served to several members of my hospital, and they fired me in retaliation for trying to hold them accountable for what I was witnessing. But I asked myself a lot. I think that really one of the most important things to really notice here is people say to me like, oh, like, you know, why are you coming forward and your colleagues aren't? And I want to really recognize here how it is that I ended up in this position, because I think that I noticed when this was all happening that there was probably about 30% of my colleagues who saw what I was seeing. And it's like this attention to detail, critical thinking, ability to really deeply analyze what you're seeing and then continue to dig into why it was happening. And so there are these types of skills in combination with the fact that I didn't go to public school in high school, and it really reminded me of that. This whole situation on the COVID floors, it reminded me of how I felt in high school when I was homeschooled and I wasn't with the in crowd. And I saw this happening with my colleagues. I saw them wanting to be with the in crowd. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to potentially jeopardize their income. They had mortgages, and so they chose to, you know, do what was easy and go along. And I would say to them, this is something that I have found to be the most powerful of all of the things that have happened in the last 2 years, is that I'm free, you know. I look at my colleagues and I know that they've sold their souls. You know, they're doing these things. They're jeopardizing their ethics and their morals. For me, it's been so empowering, because I know that my children are seeing a leader and they will be emboldened by what they have seen me do. And at the end of life, at the end of the day, these are the things that matter. My paycheck, it's irrelevant. And so I think that's really kind of the takeaway that I have gleaned from all of this, is how free I feel and how happy I am to be able to show my children how to live free.
Thank you for that. I have a few questions, if that's okay, on what we've seen travelling around.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to work out in my head what's going on, because we're getting numerous people, countless people, sitting where you are, telling us about how they're unvaccinated, and every single one is unvaccinated, has had this hospital protocol, vents, death. Right, we know that. You've seen some of the papers. You know what I'm talking about. Then I'm trying to work out, well, where, because we know that the hospitals are full of the vaccinated with their heart things and everything else, but they're clearly not on the unvaxxed ward, because that's the COVID bad ward. So it's, to me, we're still trying to work it out, and there may be people that have had the shot to get vented and killed as well. I don't know. We can't find them, just like we couldn't find the people who died of measles years ago when there was all those measles deaths. We're still looking, and we will still continue to look. So what I'm asking you is, what did you see on there? Now, we did have one COVID nurse that told us that, she was an ICU nurse, and she told us that the billing system doesn't let you code in someone. So also, if you've had one Pfizer, one Moderna, one Johnson & Johnson, you are classed as unvaccinated. So that's, you know, you could have been, that's a class of unvaccinated. We just haven't met anyone yet. And then the billing system wouldn't let them they would let you put in ventilated, unvaccinated death, and then just vent death. But there was never anything to say ventilated and had the shot. So what do you know about all the stuff we're trying to unravel and make sense of?
Yeah, so we actually had conversations. There was a support group in my community for practitioners who were being alienated and discriminated discriminated against, because in the same way that patients were being discriminated against for choosing not to get these shots, the staff members were too. And that was actually one of the things that came up when we came together and started talking, was how we noticed the documentation systems for recognizing people who are vaccinated or unvaccinated in my community. So I was fired in October of 21. So there was 6 months where I was intermittently in the hospital witnessing how they had altered the Epic system. So my hospital used Epic. And in my hospital specifically, they would come, any patient who was diagnosed with COVID, the chart would automatically populate as unvaccinated. And they did not train us how to change it was a red bar that went across the top of the chart that said unvaccinated, and they did not teach us how to change that. So I'll tell you for a fact that within a week of the onset of these vaccines released to the public, working on the COVID units, it was easily 50% of the COVID patients that we had that were vaccinated. There was never a time when my hospital had a unit full of unvaccinated patients once these vaccines were rolled out. It was that our computer systems had been manipulated to push this agenda. So that was at the Kaiser Permanentes in California. The Sutter Health organizations, I had a colleague who I spoke with who worked for that hospital, and their Epic system was set up with a drop-down menu to where there were only 2 options for her to select. When she got a patient diagnosed with COVID, there were 2 options in her system. She could select that that patient was unvaccinated or that their vaccination status was unknown. So any patient who had COVID, they were forced to document those patients as unknown, which to me, that, and then when I saw how the media spun that to say that all the patients who were hospitalized were unvaccinated, this is how they did it. They manipulated our charting systems and didn't teach the staff how to alter the charts to produce truthful evidence. So what would end up happening is that these patients who were actually vaccinated with COVID, we would try and go in and put notes in that they were vaccinated and that they had COVID. But to tell you the truth, a lot of the staff members wouldn't even ask what the patient's vaccination status was. They would just assume that they were unvaccinated, because that's what we were being told, is that only unvaccinated patients were being hospitalized with COVID, but that was never the case. So it was people like me who actually did ask and who actually did attempt to discover the truth of what was happening. We would scream it from the rooftops, but I mean, this stuff was just all being ignored and censored. And that's the biggest part of all of this, is that people like me who were there telling the truth, we were all fired and removed from the field, or we left because we couldn't ethically manage it. So now we are left with medical facilities full of people who don't have a backbone to stand up and do the right thing. And so I am very concerned for the future of medicine in this country, because we have criminalized and disciplined all of the practitioners who were actually there to protect our patients and families. Wow. It's a dangerous place. I would not take a family member to a hospital.
Thank you for this. Thank you for speaking so honestly, being so brave. It's so important, and we really appreciate everything you've done and are still doing for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.